Good morning, my dear students. Today I am going to teach you a lesson on ANS pharmacology. So, ANS stands for Autonomic Nervous System. By the term autonomic nervous system, we mean the system which innervates involuntary organs which function below the level of consciousness. Regulation of blood pressure, maintenance of tissue perfusion, regulation of volume, or composition of extracellular fluid. Even the distribution of blood flow, control of visceral smooth muscles and glands are examples of functions of ANS. This particular autonomic nervous system was named by Langley. He named it in 1898 because of the fact that unlike the somatic nervous system of the skeletal muscles, it is independent of volitional control and thus enjoys some degree of autonomy. So it is autonomous. That means it has no such volitional control, and that's the reason why it is known as autonomic nervous system. It innervates the heart, the smooth muscles, the glands, and the viscera. Nervous system, if we try to classify it in a proper manner, then we can classify it into two types: the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. Where the peripheral nervous system is again subclassified as the efferent divisions and the afferent divisions. From the efferent divisions, there comes two divisions. One is called the autonomic system, and then the other one is the somatic system. The autonomic system and the somatic system. Then the autonomic nervous system again subclassified as enteric, parasympathetic, and sympathetic. So this is basically a basic classification of the nervous system. Now here in this picture you will see there is a brainstem or spinal cord, is a cell body. From there what arises is a preganglionic neuron, and there is a ganglionic transmitter which may be some kind of transmitter like acetylcholine, and then it binds with the ganglion and then starts a postganglionic neuron which ultimately releases different kinds of neurotransmitter. It can be acetylcholine, it can be adrenaline, rather noradrenaline, and the neuroeffector transmitter will ultimately bind with the organ receptor and show its action. So this is the fundamental thing which you have to understand at the very beginning. So the ANS, now I have divided it into three systems: parasympathetic, which is also known as cholinergic system; sympathetic, which is also known as adrenergic system; and enteric, which is known as itself the enteric nervous system. So these are the three divisions of autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system mainly participates in tissue building reactions, whereas the sympathetic system enables the individual to respond to stress and prepares the body for flight or fight. So I will show you in one of the slide what happens with the neurotransmitter when released from sympathetic nervous system. An animal can survive complete elimination of sympathetic but not of parasympathetic nervous system. Usually these systems are in a state of dynamic equilibrium. The control of autonomic functions is represented at the level of central nervous system. The reason for this appears to be phylogenetic. Thus an animal or a man with the absence of entire neuroaxis except the spinal cord is still capable of maintaining blood pressure and other vegetative functions except respiration. The autonomic functions are regulated through the reticulus formation and its constituents along with the cranial nerve nuclei. In the hypothalamus, the posterior and the lateral nuclei are regarded as being associated with sympathetic activity, whereas parasympathetic function is modulated by midline nuclei. The thalamus, the center, and the relay station for sensory perception can modify the autonomic activity. So, again I am repeating, the hypothalamus, the posterior and lateral nuclei are associated with sympathetic activity. The parasympathetic function modulated in the midline nuclei, whereas thalamus, the center, the relay station for sensory perception. They can modify the autonomic activity. The limbic system, which is a system for our emotions, is postulated to coordinate the autonomic nervous system with emotions, but the ultimate synchronization of somatic and vegetative functions is achieved in the cortex. Now, the autonomic innervation consists of myelinated fibers. It is a preganglionic fibers. These are basically all of them are myelinated fibers, and which forms a synapse with the cell body of a non-myelinated second neuron termed as postganglionic neurons. So, the postganglionic neurons are basically, these are non-myelinated, whereas the preganglionic neurons are myelinated. I think you have some idea about myelin sheath and gap junction. You have read it in the Department of Physiology. The postganglionic fiber in turn terminates in a synapse with the receptors of the organ supplied by it. So, that is, the synapse may thus be defined conceptually as a structure that is formed by the close apposition of a neuron either with another neuron or with a effector cell. The synapse merely transmits impulses from one neuron to another. The effect of the second neuron depends upon the type of neurotransmitter released and the type of receptor on which it acts. Hence, the synapse between the preganglionic and the postganglionic fibers is termed as ganglion. These are not called synapse anymore, these are called ganglions. Whereas that between postganglionic fiber and the receptor, that means at this region, these are known as neuroeffector junction. So, this may be emphasized that the synapse is a physiological and not an anatomical entity. Passage of an impulse across a synapse is carried out by the process of transmission. So, it's called transmission of neurotransmission. Whereas it is carried along the preganglionic or postganglionic fibers by the process of conduction. So, when the impulse is carried through sinus, it is called transmission. When it is carried along the postganglionic or postganglionic fibers along with the postganglionic fibers, it is called conduction. So, these are different terms. There is more or less the same thing, but there is a different terminology which are being used over there. Now, here you see in the sympathetic one, the preganglionic neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In parasympathetic one, this neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. Whereas in case of sympathetic innervation of adrenal medulla, which is basically anatomically and embryologically and functionally a sympathetic ganglion, there also it's acetylcholine. It does not have a postganglionic continuation. This adrenal medulla does not require a postganglionic continuation. It directly releases adrenaline. So, and actually serves its secretory function. So, it secretes mainly adrenaline and a very small amount of noradrenaline. The ratio is ranging from 4:1 it's around 4:1. In that ratio, it's being released from adrenal medulla. Whereas in sympathetic ganglions, you'll see the preganglionic neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, but the postganglionic neurotransmitter is going to be norepinephrine or noradrenaline. Nor, N-O-R, it stands for N-ohny radical. N stands for nitrogen, ohny means without, radical means a methyl group, CH3 group. When we will see the structure of adrenaline, you can see that the methyl group is missing in noradrenaline. And that's the reason why it is nomenclatured as norepinephrine or noradrenaline. In the third one, in the parasympathetic one, the preganglionic neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, whereas the postganglionic neurotransmitter is also acetylcholine. Obviously, the innervations are different. In case of these sympathetic one, the receptors, postganglionic receptors are the adrenergic receptors. They are alpha beta receptors. In case of acetylcholine, these are cholinergic receptors. Mostly they are muscarinic, that means M1, M2, M3 to M7, and nicotinic receptors, which can be subclassified as NN and NM receptor. Whereas in case of somatic nervous system, there is no ganglion, and directly the acetylcholine is released and is binding with the nicotinic receptor, and this receptor is known as NM receptor. That means the N receptor which is present in the motor end plate. So here acetylcholine is directly binding with the nicotinic receptor. So what are the important afferents which which we are seeing? The visceral afferents, and it carries from the viscera, and the afferent impulses which reflexively modify the autonomic function. And the parasympathetic nervous system is having that particular function. That means it carries from the viscera the afferent impulses which is responsible for modification of autonomic function. Whereas it supplies motor fibers to smooth muscle, glands, heart, viscera, the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is known as craniosacral outflow. The visceral afferents fibers are non-myelinated fibers. They mediate visceral secretions except pain, coordinate the autonomic activity, and regulate vasomotor, respiratory, and viscerosomatic reflexes. The important afferents are as follows. Afferents from the carotid sinus and the carotid body carried through the glossopharyngeal nerves. This stimulation of these afferent fibers occurs as a result of local elevation of blood pressure or decrease in blood pH. It results in a fall in blood pressure and bradycardia, that is called carotid sinus reflex or baroreceptor reflex, and stimulation of respiration, that is called carotid body reflex. The hypotension is basically due to the reduction of sympathetic outflow, and bradycardia occurs because there is increase in vagal tone. It's a compensatory phenomenon. Apparence from the aortic arch carried through the vagus nerve, and afferent fibers from the lungs, heart, and the GI, that is also carried through the vagus nerve. And these afferents mediate visceral sensations. These reflex responses vary from hypotension, that is known as, you know it from physiology, Basal-Gerry's reflex, to vomiting, afferents from stomach. The other one is craniosacral outflow. These outflow mainly the efferent in nature. It consists of midbrain or tactile outflow through the Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the oculomotor, that means the third nerve, which terminates in the ciliary ganglion in the orbit. The postganglionic fibers supply the ciliary muscle and the circular fibers of the sphincter pupil. And then comes the medullary outflow. It is comprising of the parasympathetic component of the facial, glossopharyngeal, and vagus nerve. The facial nerve supplies secretomotor and the vasodilator fibers to the submandibular and the sublingual salivary glands. The glossopharyngeal nerve carries the parasympathetic supply to the parotid glands of the otic ganglia, whereas the vagus provides secretomotor and vasodilator fibers for the thoracic and abdominal viscera, with the exception of lower third of the GI tract. and ultimately it's a craniosacral outflow. So the sacral outflow consists of axons arising from second, third, fourth sacral segment of the spinal cord and forms the pelvic nerves which synapse near or within the bladder. The lower third of the GI tract, including the rectum, the sexual organs, it supplies secretomotor and vasodilator fibers. So basically the distribution of the parasympathetic system is much more limited than that of the sympathetic system. So usually a single preganglionic parasympathetic fiber, a single one, synapses with single postganglionic cell body of the same system, and an exception to this rule is the vagus nerve, the preganglionic fiber of which synapse with approximately 8,000 ganglion cells in the Auerbach plexus of small intestine. Whereas if you come to the distribution of sympathetic nervous system, we are talking about thoracolumbar outflow. The cells of the preganglionic sympathetic fibers are situated in the intermediolateral column of the spinal cord, and it extends from the 8th cranial to the 2nd to 3rd lumbar segments. The sympathetic ganglion are of 5 types. Paravertebral ganglia, it consists of 22 pairs of ganglia that forms a lateral chain on either side of the vertebral column. The prevertebral ganglia lie in the abdomen and the pelvis. The terminal ganglia, these are few and distributed in close proximity to the viscera such as urinary bladder and rectum. The intermediate ganglia, which are closely associated with anterior spinal roots and lie outside the paravertebral ganglia. And the last one is adrenal medulla, which I have already described anatomically and embryologically. It's functionally. This one is a sympathetic ganglia, and this does not have a postganglionic continuation. It serves as a secretory function and mainly secretes adrenaline and small amount of noradrenaline. So these are in brief about the physiology of autonomic nervous system. Again I am repeating that ultimately this system is running like this because it is in the balance between two systems. One is basically the parasympathetic system, which is controlled by the acetylcholine, and the other one is the sympathetic system, which is controlled by the adrenaline and noradrenaline. Now acetylcholine released from cholinergic fibers as being mentioned before, and this is known as vagus stuff because the chemical substance is also known as vagus stuff, whereas noradrenaline is released from the postganglionic neuron of the as a adrenergic neurotransmitter from the sympathetic nerve terminals. So this one is known as accelerant stuff. So the acetylcholine is known as vagus stuff, whereas noradrenaline is known as accelerant stuff. So here you see the basic action of the sympathetic system. What happens? Either you fight or flight, there will be increased heart rate, there will be dilated pupil when the noradrenaline or adrenaline will act, there will be increase in blood pressure, there will be bronchodilation because they are acting on their own receptors, especially adrenaline is acting on the beta 2 receptors, and in skeletal muscle there is vasodilatation. So this is the function of the sympathetic system on different organs, and most of the times the role of acetylcholine is just the reverse of that of this sympathetic system. That means it will decrease heart rate, acetylcholine will constrict people, it will decrease BP, it will cause bronchoconstriction and muscle contraction. So basically everything is running due to the balance between the two systems, if you give some kind of antagonist of any one of these, then the other one will take other hand. Suppose you will give atropine as an antagonist of acetylcholine, then the sympathetic system, the adrenaline and noradrenaline will take the upper hand, and you will see all these phenomena: increase in heart rate, the eyes will be dilated, blood pressure is going to be increased, the bronchodilation and vasodilatation. So all these phenomena will be observed if you block any one of the system neurotransmitter with their respective antagonist drug. And why we human beings are maintaining this physiological balance? Because these neurotransmitter, they are keeping a balance between themselves to run the system in a proper physiological order. So with this, I will conclude the initial presentation on autonomic nervous system. Thank you so much.